Hi everyone, welcome back to this Saturday's walk and talk. And today I'm going to talk about something that's not only relevant for kids and for parenting, but it's relevant to us as parents as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about emotional intelligence. Now, emotional intelligence, I'm about to not be so emotionally intelligent. I'm going across this creek that's, my feet get a bit wet. See, if I was smart, I would just turn around and go the other direction, but you know what? I'm going for it. So put your hand up if in the last week you've said something or fired a text or sent an email to somebody that you wished you didn't. And you've said some things that probably didn't land the wrong way with a friend or a colleague, and you did it because you were being emotional. We do it as moms and dads and teachers and adults. We do it all the time. And that is a big part of emotional intelligence, is being self-aware enough to know that when you're emotional, you should stop and take a deep breath and calm your polyvagal nerves so your prefrontal cortex can engage. Emotional intelligence is comprised of 4 different things: being self-aware, personally aware, being able to self-regulate, self-soothe, and that's where we calm our amygdala so our prefrontal cortex can engage. The second part is being able to self-regulate, self-soothe. I just said that. The third part is being relationship aware, which means knowing your friends, knowing your family, know what their triggers are, know what their traumas are, know what's happening for them. So that way you can make sound decisions on how you approach that relationship with them, especially if you're triggered. And the fourth is being socially aware. And socially aware means that you can walk into a room, and whether it be a dinner party with people who are acquaintances and really friends or wherever, and you can read the room. Your gut will tell you. You can tell by people's tone, by body language, by facial expressions, gestures. You can tell. And so being socially aware allows you to be able to identify what's going on around you, so that way you can take some deep breaths, make sure that you're personally aware, and make sure that you're self-aware so that you can self-regulate and not trigger anyone, especially if you notice that somebody's heightened or if they're angry or frustrated or whatnot. I do a lot of social media, and I do it to try to help parents out parent their kids, because like I said before, none of us are perfect. I also do it so that I can help teachers out with the kids in their class, and I also do it so parents and teachers can be on the same page, which is the Emotional Schools Framework. And emotional intelligence is the key to that. So every Wednesday I do a post that's more geared towards teachers, and every Saturday I do a walk and talk that's more geared towards parents. Now here's the thing, both posts are beneficial to teachers and parents. They're interchangeable, because we should be working in a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week cycle where we're on the same page. And if we're on the same page with emotional intelligence, we're going to end up with kids who are a lot stronger and aware. So, to make a long story short, last Wednesday, I made a post about self-assessment. Now, this post was directed at teachers. And the post revolved around us as teachers sometimes being a little more controlling, because, and teachers know this, we're type A. We do like to control. We like to make sure that kids are all structured and organized and doing the right thing because it's easier. And sometimes it's hard to let those reins off, because the alternative could be chaos. And so I challenge teachers, or I ask the question, are you more structured and in control and don't allow for kids to figure their behavior out or their academics out because you're afraid of the consequence? So for example, let's just say, and you guys all know these kids, parents and teachers, let's just say we have a kid in our class who is a perfectionist. Put your hand up if you have one of those. I don't, but I know a lot of parents who do, and I know a lot of teachers who have those kids in class. So as a teacher, when we have a kid in our class who's a perfectionist, we'll try to co-regulate. We'll try to get ahead of it. We'll try to make sure that we don't run into a bit of a temper tantrum or the kid breaking down. So we control that chaos. However, we need to challenge our kids so that they stop and they self-assess. And the reason why this is super important, so let's talk about self-assessment. And I know parents, that you hear the word assessment and you kind of cringe because it's like, oh God, I hated tests when I was in school. But that's not what it is. Use the term self-assessment in terms of holy man. Okay, I might fall here. Use the term, think about self-assessment in relation to emotional intelligence and that piece on being self-aware and personally aware. We want our kids and ourselves to be able to stop when we feel those emotions. If the work gets too hard or if somebody's ticked us off, we want to be able to stop and we want to be able to self-assess so that way we can regulate our body and we can make a sound decision. So when it comes to academics, if something gets frustrating or feels too hard, we want to be able to stop, be aware that something's frustrating us and it's too hard, take some deep breaths, engage our prefrontal cortex so we can get back to critical thinking. And when it comes to behavior, it's the same thing for adults and for kids. The more we can self-assess, where we're self-aware and we're personally aware, and then we can self-regulate, it allows us to control our emotions so that way we can do the right thing instead of the wrong thing. So one of the things that we have at our school that's up on our walls, it's a red poster and it's called a mindfulness map, and it has a bunch of questions on there. So we have this mindful map that's attached to a poster with the core competencies, personal and social awareness, because we want our kids to always be personally aware so they can self-regulate. We need to make sure that emotional intelligence is at the center of everything that we do, whether it be in schools or at home, because if we do that, we're going to have kids of stronger character. So in all my previous videos, it's been about the science of emotions. It's about how to manage your emotions. It's about how to self-soothe, and it talks about the brain science, and it talks about, you know, the last one I talked about free and structured play with my friend Robin. And all of that comes into play to developing our kids' emotional intelligence. Now, here's the thing that's super important. Oftentimes people put a lot of weight behind IQ instead of EQ. So IQ is your intelligence quotient. It's like I have an IQ of 120. And people don't put a lot of weight behind your emotional quotient, your EQ, which is your emotional intelligence. And the thing is that with your intelligence quotient or your IQ, it doesn't really change. It can't evolve. It may fluctuate 5 to 10 points in your lifetime, but your emotional intelligence can always grow. And what we're seeing more and more and more in the workforce is employers wanting people who are emotionally intelligent. And you see it if you've been to a job interview recently. They ask you questions about how do you handle conflict? How do you communicate with somebody who's angry? What do you do when somebody's angry with you? How do you handle adversity at work? How do you work through difficult situations? What happens when you do have a task at your job that's too hard? Those are all behavior type questions. Intelligence that allows you to thrive in your job. And so that has to develop. So could you imagine if we develop emotional intelligence early on with our kids, starting when they're 2, 3 years old, you know, and you just teach them. You teach them to be self-aware. You teach them to self-regulate. You teach them to be socially aware. You teach them to be relationship aware. And kids do it. I have kids in primary classes who know exactly what happens when little Johnny gets frustrated with his work that's not perfect. They know. They'll step back and go, uh-oh, he's about to crumple his paper up and throw it in the garbage. And they might even, and in my school they do, they'll step in and they'll help little Johnny take some deep breaths, hold his hand, and work through it with him. And that's what we want. That's called relationship aware. That's called socially aware. So at the end of the day, emotional intelligence is at the center of everything. Whether I'm talking about self-assessment, whether you're talking about learning how to read, learning how to do math, you know, emotional intelligence allows for that growth mindset. It takes you away from that fixed mindset where you just quit and you give up. Emotional intelligence allows you to take deep breaths, and it allows you to move forward. So to sum up, emotional intelligence is composed of 4 things: self-awareness, self-regulation, relationship awareness, and social awareness. And we want to teach our kids that through self-assessment, right? We want our kids to be able to self-assess their emotions so they can do the right thing and say the right thing. And also, parents, if you're watching this and teachers watching this, when you get into a conflict with your colleagues or another parent or whomever, where you're about to send that text you wish you didn't, be self-aware. Take some deep breaths and realize your emotions are out of check, and you don't want to say something that you're going to regret, because God knows we've all done it. So on that note, that's a little bit of a foundational view of emotional intelligence. It's starting to pour rain out here, so I'm getting a little bit wet. But anyways, peace out. This time I'm in Merritt, BC, under a bridge for a little bit. So again, peace out. See you next Saturday.